Hey guys, what's going on? I hope that you all enjoyed my collaboration / cover of the song Dethrone by Bad Omens. It was awesome getting to work with Jake Atkins and Rufus Mann. This lesson video is going to be just slightly different than normal because the video that's up of me performing this song, you can't see the drums throughout the entire cover. So because of that, I will not be using the timestamps from my cover video. I instead will just be using the timestamps out of the MP3 that you can listen to on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you get your music from. So those timestamps will just be from the audio version of the track, not my cover version like it usually is. Now, before we go any further, I want to leave a huge thank you to all the names that have been scrolling on the screen for you. These are the names of the awesome people who support me on Patreon to really help make lesson videos like the one you're currently watching possible. So a huge thank you to Taylor Bradford and the rest of my incredible patrons. Now, getting on with this video, let's get you learning Dethrone by Bad Omens. This track is a ton of fun to play. And something that's pretty sweet about it too is if you're a bit newer to the kit and you're sort of just getting into playing metalcore tracks, this song's really good. It's a simpler song, an easier to learn, a little bit of a shorter track. So great for anybody that's kind of just starting up, maybe in their third, fourth year of drums and trying to get into some heavier material. Now, the things that you're gonna need to know for this track, this song is at 150 beats per minute and there's no tempo changes. The time signature is 4/4 and there is one very brief tempo change to 2/4 that we're gonna talk about when we come to that. The first section in this song that we're gonna take a look at is the intro. The intro is gonna introduce some concepts and patterns that we're gonna see throughout this entire track. So keep note of that. Once you learn some of this, you're really gonna have a lot easier time learning some future sections. The second quarter of the intro is probably the most difficult part to learn in the song. I probably will do a hands episode breaking down the concept of this section in the future. If you'd like to see that, make sure to request it below. For this section, you're gonna be maintaining quarter notes on a crash cymbal. I used my crash ride. All the while, you're gonna be playing straight eighth note triplets on your feet and then an eighth note triplet pattern on your hands. Now, that's not too complicated in theory, but the reason why it can get a little hairy is just because of the fact that on your hands, you're gonna need to double up on the snare at a couple parts in the pattern. And when you do that, it's gonna be difficult to get your right hand back to the crash cymbal in time. You're gonna see what I'm talking about here in a moment. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's the first section of the song, the intro, performed for you now. Coming off of the intro, there's one more thing I should have added before we played that. It's just really simple note for you guys. The second half of that section is the pattern for the chorus, and we're gonna see that pattern a lot throughout. So it's a good thing you've learned it now. So the next section we come to is verse 1. Unlike the intro, verse 1 is actually gonna be played straight. So we're just gonna be maintaining 16th notes on our feet to create a very common pattern, and for a lot of you, I think will be pretty easy to pick up upon first listen. Then we're gonna be placing quarter notes on the hi-hat for the first half, and then the second half is broken up into placement of China cymbal, and then concluding with the final quarter, you're going to be placing your right hand on the crash cymbal. The end of this section is going to introduce to you a fill that we're going to see a couple more times throughout this track. It's kind of a cool fill, and the idea behind the fill, at least from my perspective, is to transition us from some of the sections that are straight, playing 16th notes or 8th notes, into sections where we're going to be going back to the 8th note triplet phrasing that we see a lot throughout this song. So the first part of the fill is just going to be 4 notes on the snare drum, and those guys are going to be straight 16ths, and the second part of the fill will be an 8th note triplet pattern through the toms. So the next section we're gonna come to, I'm gonna just label chorus 1. There's a lot packed into it though. You could kind of say that inside of this section, there's also a pre-chorus and a little bit of a post-chorus. So for the pre-chorus, which is the first 4 bars of the section, we're gonna be playing a very similar pattern to how we opened up the song, where we put our hand on the crash cymbal twice, and then we're playing a bit of a triplet pattern on the hi-hat. Then the second and third phrase, the second and third groups of 4 bars, is gonna be the chorus itself. And we already know this pattern from the second half of the intro. Pretty straightforward, nothing to really talk about there. It's a pretty basic pattern. The only really cool part, maybe trippy, sort of trippy part, is the fact that you gotta put on a downbeat, a bell, and then that little hi-hat fill. But because you're already this far in the lesson, I'm sure you've already learned the pattern. Then the last quarter, the last 4 bars of this section that's gonna take us out of the section, is going back to that section that I described as probably the most difficult in the song. And just to make it a little bit more difficult, this guy is actually a more difficult version of it, just because of the standpoint of like the pattern is mixed up a little bit and it's more broken. So there's just more to sort of take account for when you learn this. It's not as easy as just copy and pasting this pattern from the first section. So with all that said, let's take a look at chorus 1, performed for you now. Okay, so the next section we're gonna come to is verse 2. The first half of verse 2 is just gonna be kick, snare. It's a super basic pattern. Something I like about this pattern being placed here though is that the guitars are still following the same pattern from verse 1, but now we're just reducing the kick that would be following the guitars like it was in verse 1. I think that was just kind of a cool decision they make to make the second half of this section hit a lot harder. So just before the second half of verse 2, there is a bar that's been inserted, and that bar has the only time signature change for the entire track. It's a bar of 2/4. So just 1, 2, and then we're gonna come back in for a bar of 4 and continue on with the section. What it looks like is like cymbal chokes, 1, 2, 3, with the last choke ending on the and of 4, and then we're gonna go into that bar of 2 beats. So 1, 2, 3, choke, 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 1, 2, downbeat. And that's all it is. It's super simple. The only reason why I actually bring it up in this lesson for you guys is for those of you at home that want to put this into a DAW and line it up and maybe do a cover of your own. If you're planning on doing something like that, it's imperative that you account for this bar, because if you do not, the bar that follows it, the downbeat of this little breakdown section that we go into, that guy will not come in on the downbeat, and then you're going to be sort of offset by 2 beats for the rest of the track, and you definitely don't want that. With all that said, let's take a look at the second verse performed for you now. So the next section we're gonna come to is the second chorus, but I'm not actually gonna play that for you just because we've already played that pattern twice and it's identical to what we've seen already in this song. It's really simple, it's just 8 bars. Upon listen, you guys will know what section it was that you've already learned and you can just place it there and you're good to move on. So the next section we're gonna come to that I'm performing for you is gonna be the bridge. The bridge is really awesome. It's just 2 really cool breakdowns. It's a breakdown and then a faster version of the first breakdown that we saw. I don't know, it's a lot of fun. I'm sure you guys enjoyed this section of the actual cover. I did playing it and it just hits really, really hard. Let's take a look at the bridge performed for you right now. So the next section that we would go into if I was following the song would be the third chorus. I'm gonna take it out just like I did for the second chorus. It's gonna be, again, the same pattern that we saw in the intro and the first chorus and the second chorus, just twice in the third chorus. So the third chorus is actually a double chorus. You're just gonna play that pattern that we've seen throughout. You're gonna play it twice and then you move on. Moving on to the next section we're gonna be demonstrating. It's actually the final demonstration of the song. Definitely a quicker learn than a lot of the other songs that I've covered recently on the channel. So we're gonna take a look at the outro next. The outro is an 8th note triplet phrasing throughout the entire thing, and it's introducing a brand new pattern for the track. The only tough part about the outro is going to be in the center of the outro. There's a little bit of a transition fill. It's really simple fill. The sticking itself is no problem. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4 on the snare, then 4 on the rack tom, and then 4 on the floor tom. No big deal there. But the reason why I say it's a little bit tricky is just because of the speed of it. You're going to play it as 16th note triplets, so it's going to be really fast around the kit, and then come back in on the downbeat for a crash cymbal before you transition into a hi-hat pattern. With all that said, let's take a look at the outro performed for you right now. Alright, awesome guys, there you have it. Congratulations on learning the song Dethrone by Bad Omens. Really hope you enjoyed my cover of it with Jake Atkins and Rufus Mann, and I really hope you enjoyed this lesson video breaking it down. Again, I have to leave a huge thank you to all of the patrons who support me on Patreon. Those names have been scrolling on the screen for you right now. Thanks to my patrons, lesson videos like the one you just watched are made possible, so I really appreciate your guys' support. Outside of that, I have a brand new line of merch out. You can check that out in the description below. If there were any sections in this song that really tripped you up and you'd like to see a further explanation of them, make sure to request those sections in the comments below, and we can maybe cover those sections in an episode of What the Fill, Feet, or Hands. Lastly, you can connect with me further at my social media pages. Those are on the screen for you right now, as well as always in the description below. Thank you so much for checking out this video, and I will see you guys all very soon with something new.